Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
You know, when you get to dial that action up to 11, beautiful things happen, and guess what? If you're within the sound of my voice, that must mean you're in the seats with once more. As always, my name is Dave Voigt, and I am the host of this podcast where we sit down with a wide-ranging variety of entertainment industry professionals and we pick their brain about current projects, to the industry, how they got started, and so very much more, in a light and in a conversational fashion. You know, if you like how we do things around here, I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that you do, because let's face it, you're listening right now. And if you are, please keep listening. Subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider of choice. We're available pretty much everywhere. Places like Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. Plus, we archive every single one of our episodes over at our In the Seats YouTube channel. So if you can give us a like and subscribe there as well, we'd absolutely appreciate it. Also, don't hesitate to check us out on social media. We're on the Facebook, the Twitter, the Instagram, the Letterboxd, the TikTok, and probably several other places that I'm forgetting about at In the Seats for all sorts of fun updates. And finally, and I do dare say most importantly, please pay us a visit over at In the Seats, intheseats.ca, for our latest and greatest from the world of film, television, basically the moving image at large. Because guess what? If we love to watch it and write about it and talk about it, we love it that much more when you come by and read about it and listen about it. So do us that kindness, come on by and pay us a visit. On this episode, we got a fun one. It is dropping on Netflix today, right now, as we speak. It's probably already there. It is unequivocally probably the action film of the year. It is called The Shadow Strays, from writer-director Timo Tjahjanto. If I pronounce that wrong, I apologize. But Timo, glorious man. It is a one-woman action flick filled with revenge, violence, swordplay. It's just proof that there is such great stuff coming out of sort of the Pacific Rim with these directors like Filipino directors and directors like Timo and so many other people, as well as his work with the Mo brothers, and just the man knows his shit, and he's got more stuff coming too, especially with stuff like Nobody 2 and a lot of other fun stuff happening. The guy knows his action, and we love it when people know their action, because it just makes our lives that much more entertaining. But this goes all the way back to TIFF. We had the chance to sit down with Timo to talk about the origin of the film and what made him want to tell this story, and work with Netflix as well, because he's done a couple with Netflix now. But the guy is a hell of a filmmaker, and if places like Netflix are giving him carte blanche to do whatever he wants with stuff like this, I'm all for it, because this Indonesian action stuff is, again, it's next level. It's proof that you don't need $300 million to make an action movie. You can do it a lot less. But Timo, again, is one of those guys who knows his shit. And as we talk back at TIFF, you can tell that too. Unfortunately, this conversation we had a little bit of technical issues. There's a little bit of static in there. It's not unlistenable, but it's not up to our usual standards. But we're going to publish it anyway, just because we had fun talking with Timo. And like I said, go to Netflix, watch The Shadow Strays. I'm tired. It's late when I'm recording this, but like I said, it is The Shadow Strays. It's on Netflix now. But first, enjoy our talk with Timo, because between you and me, it is a darn good one. This is such a wild movie. I absolutely fucking love it.
Hey, thank you.
It's just, pardon the expression, but I mean balls to the wall.
Thank you.
Just brutal violence. And I mean, I guess my first question is, walk me through not only the origin of this story, but just how you wanted to tell it. Because, I mean, again, there's so much swordplay. Like, I didn't expect it to be that much swordplay, and it allows for that much more intimacy and sort of aggression for the characters and for the entire piece.
Right. Well, when it comes to the swordplay stuff, I always feel, here's the thing. I know I will never be able to top what, obviously the Raid already has done that. The Raid already has mastered the art of like hand-to-hand combat. And you know, like I did the Night Comes for Us, which is a lot about that as well, you know. And knowing that I have two female leads, how do I sort of like go into something that is visceral without relying too much on a hand-to-hand combat, especially knowing that I'm going to be casting essentially two actresses that has never been in an action film before. And I've always been interested in the, you know, in the sort of idea that, okay, these characters are good, but like once you hand them another type of weapon, then they become better.
Yeah.
You know? So in that sense, I was like, all right, well, let's do that. And I've always wanted to make a movie that is sort of ninja-esque.
Right.
You know,
right.
So, you know, that becomes another sort of like wish fulfillment of mine. You know, like whether, okay, well, let's do it. Like, let's do a movie that is essentially has ninja aesthetics and the tonality of what a ninja film I assume would be, without delving too much into the whole shinobi sort of like
For sure,
lore,
right.
You know? Yeah.
No, I mean, obviously having two female protagonists is fantastic, and I mean, at least from my perspective, when it comes to action movies, there's always a little extra badass when it's a female protagonist.
Yeah, of course, I believe so. I believe, here's the thing, like, I mean, obviously we are male, so I think we are saying it from our, even as we intended to be from a good faith, we
course. Yeah, no,
we still
absolutely.
can't escape that we are seeing it from a specific male gaze,
Yeah.
right? But here's the thing, I truly believe female protagonists allow, from a creative sort of standpoint, allow myself at least to have a much more sort of like complex sort of complexity that doesn't sort of like seem to exist in a male protagonist. You know, like I did that with the Night Comes for Us, is essentially this thing about flawed masculinity.
Yeah.
You know, it's about like this broken brotherhood, but like I've explored that before already, and here it is. I am presented with two female protagonists, and what do I want to tell? Like I always want to tell a story about innocence and that is colliding with this sort of like a creature that is born in a violent world, you know, and also especially a weird sort of like motherhood theme, you know, like and I feel like, well, how do you tell a story about motherhood and like, you know, like this sort of weird sort of like longing to relate or to be relatable, or longing to wanting to take care of someone in the context of a very violent sort of environment, you know. So,
no, I mean, I gotta ask, talk to me about finding Aurora, because she's really great in this, and I mean, it's one of those things where you can tell in watching that her character is conflicted with what she's been able to, like, she's being tortured by it, but she also recognizes how these skills are keeping her alive.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that just happens naturally while we are doing it, because I've always told this to other people, like the strength in Aurora is she is both fierce at the same time very innocent, you know, and that's how she is in real life. She's, you know, like she's a very young girl, like, you know, like when I met her she was 18, and then when we shoot the film she turned 19, so she's still essentially a teenager when we shoot the film, you know, when we shot the film. And I think that quality alone already give like this very different perspective of, as opposed to if I would say I'm casting somebody or writing something about like a seasoned killer, right? Here's a character who is very good at what she's doing, but like you can tell, you know, like the clumsiness in her action is not by accident. Like it's everything is sort of like planned there. Like she can be relentless, she can be unstoppable, but like she's still prone to doing clumsy and almost like sort of like stupid things. Right. Like she's a well-meaning character.
Totally.
You know, like that's the whole point. Like you don't always need to make a protagonist that already think 10 steps ahead. Sometimes you just need to write a protagonist who follow his or her instincts. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the visual aesthetic of the film. I mean, in very much feels like the kind of film that is honoring the genre. I mean, even specifically sort of with the opening shots with them in Japan,
Right.
and just sort of the snowfall and everyone in the suits. Like it really had that idyllic bit to it.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan of like Kinji Fukasaku's films and all that stuff. Like I'm always about like how do I make this sort of like hard-boiled Yakuza world in the context of an Indonesian film in the end. Like I try to do that in the Nikon's Rush, but like it doesn't fit the world just because like I'm telling a triad story essentially. And in here, hey, I'm doing a film about female ninjas, so why not like start it with Yakuzas who are ironically killed by ninjas who aren't even Japanese, So there's something a bit darkly comedic about that, So there you go.
When it comes to staging action, I'm kind of curious because obviously so much is happening in camera, and I mean it's obviously very well choreographed.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, how do you manage to sort of, I guess, keep your actors in there for as long as humanly possible? Because I mean, there's going to be fight teams, there's going to be stunt teams, but at the same time, you want your actors to be in there, like delivering the blows and taking the blows.
That's the one thing that I'm kind of insist actually. Like I feel you can't be the character and you can't feel the hardships of these characters or the coldness or the lack of sort of like mercy in some of these characters if you don't sort of perform the actions, and especially it rings true to somebody like the character Umbra, her mentor, like Hana, like the actress who's playing her. She's a very sort of like happy-go-lucky girl. She's a very feminine and happy-go-lucky and demure sort of like person. But like I told her like, well, here you're required to be this badass, jaded sort of like female warrior, like a cold-blooded killer who, like as the movie comes full circle, she's also discovering her humanity. Like like the difference between her character and Aurora's character, like Aurora's character 13 wears her heart outside her sleeve, while the other one sort of like has her heart way buried, way below, underneath all the like the iron sort of like armor that she doesn't even discover until much later towards her end, and I think like her and these two girls like having me demanding them to be as physical as possible, to the point of exhaustion often, like to the point of, well, look guys, like I'm not gonna lie, like when you do this, like you guys are definitely gonna cry, like things are going to be hard for you guys most of all, but like it'll be worth it. Like you can see it on the screen that they are giving it all. Like like I've worked with some people who have used stunt doubles. I've worked with and here's the thing, stunt doubles is always necessary. Like when it comes to the most dangerous things, like you just don't want to hurt your actors, but like them kind of like at least feeling the blows of it all, like them kind of like feeling the thirst of the trust of the sword and everything, like that's kind of almost like it's an absolute necessity for me to develop these characters.
Do you get a lot of time in terms of getting them comfortable with stuff like the blade? Because I mean, even sort of those moments where she kills somebody and then just flicks the blade and the blood comes off, like there was such snap and such cleanness to it.
Yes, I mean that's also the result of like 3 months training nonstop. So basically we kind of went from basic training where as simple as swinging the sword, because like you can't do that unless, if you're not doing that, then the sword doesn't become a part of your appendage, and them committing to that is key. And by that I mean like 3 months, you guys can't take any jobs, just do this, and they commit to it, Yeah.
No, I'm curious, like from your perspective, because obviously you've been making films for a minute. You've been you get your other half with the Mo brothers, and I mean, you guys have evolved into these really sort of distinct faces in Indonesian cinema, and Indonesian cinema has really sort of blown up to a very different spot. How do you feel, I guess, cinema in general, coming from this part of the world, has evolved to really come into something different? Because obviously audiences were blown away by the Raid, but then obviously the next time you work, the next time you do something else, there's more. We're getting more layers. We're getting more. Like, how do you see sort of your industry building?
Well, I would say honestly, it's here's the thing. I don't feel like we are. Maybe I'm more of a pessimist, but like I feel it's a very slow moving process. Just because, you know, we have some really great filmmakers like Kimo, for example. I think he's sort of the undisputable king of horror right now in Indonesia. While Joko, you know, Joko Anwar,
Of course, yeah.
he's pretty much like the saint of like this more kind of like twisted psychological sort of horror. And in that sense, like these two and a slew of others kind of like are essentially in maintaining that quality, you know, because like if you talk about Indonesia, we can talk about like hundreds if not thousands of like horror film and genre film that comes out of it, but like really in the end of the day, there's only a few people that sort of maintain the quality and the ambition that is required for people like you to recognize it, you know. I feel we are just like these little tadpoles in this huge pool, you know. Like I feel like in the grand scheme of it all, we still have so much to learn. We still have so much to go through before we finally become something like South Korea, for example. Let's not even compare, you know. Like I think South Korea having this level of quality also sort of depicts the kind of society that they have. Like they are a country of film lovers, and by film lovers I mean truly love films. It's been encouraged from the government. It's been encouraged to love their own sort of like films. While in Indonesia it's different. Like we are kind of, it's like the Wild West.
Right,
you know, like
right,
you're still kind of like, let's see, does this work? Maybe not. And you know, in that sense, like I'm really thankful for Netflix to be able to support a filmmaker like me, because like here's the thing. Sometimes people will be saying like, hey Timo, why do you stop making films for the cinema? Well, it's not because I stopped making films for the cinema. It's just because the kind of idea that I have, I don't think anybody will want to support me unless, you know, look, what I'm trying to say is films like The Shadow Strays might not work as well in the Indonesian cinema just because of the violent content, just because of its length, just because it's the kind of action is definitely a high risk sort of like thing. You know, like with horror you can get away with making it for like 300 grand, but you can't cheat around action, you know? Yeah.
And especially with something like this, it's one of those things where, especially given the nature of, you know, the streaming boom and companies like Netflix and everybody else, it's allowing sort of the definition of what cinema is to change. And
exactly. I do feel in the long run, you know, like something. Here's the thing: without Netflix, we don't have stuff like some of these amazing Korean films, like, you know, like Jesus. Okay, I can't remember the title, but like, what is that Spanish that is it Spanish or is it Colombian film about like
Platform? Yeah.
I mean, like, you can't imagine like
we're getting a second one.
Exactly, we're getting the second one. You know, like, and then so I would say in the long run, for the world cinema, for the existence of world cinema, Netflix has been really great.
For sure.
You know? Yeah.
Now, let me just start putting a bow on this. I mean, I know this is not your first go-around with Toronto because you were here with Headshot.
Yep.
But, I mean, I'm curious because obviously with a film like this, you're not necessarily going to have that traditional theatrical run. It'll play here. It'll play a few other places. It's not going to be... Most people will see it at home or on their platforms. Mm-hmm. Is this the moment where you, as sort of the creator, as sort of the visionary, sounds like I'm blowing smoke up your ass, but I don't need to. But it's one of those things where... Is this where the payoff is? Is this where you can sort of have that cathartic release?
Yeah, I feel like it is.
It's in the universe now.
I feel this. Here's the thing. Like I am exhausted as hell. You know, like I literally wrapped like a scene with Riza at like 3 a.m. in the morning today. But like here's the thing. Like if I don't experience this, then I don't think like I want to be there with the audience. You know, like, and I'm happy when, you know, I remember when The Night Comes for Us came out. Like some people managed to make it a communal sort of like viewing together, you know, like there's a bunch of dudes somewhere in Ohio like just sent me a message like, hey, I'm with my friends now, like the 12 of us, like we're just drinking beer and eating fucking pizza and like watching The Night Comes for Us and we are shouting and hollering. And for me, like I feel almost like this FOMO-ness because like, man, I want to be there, I want to be doing this. And honestly, like Midnight Madness or Fantastic Fest has been really great at accommodating this sort of like event, you know, like this sort of once in a lifetime sort of like thing, because like I definitely feel I'm not so much into awards, I'm not so much into good reviews are always great, you know, like to encourage you, but like seeing people reacting and screaming and shouting as they see all this bloodbath comes into the big screen, you can't buy that.
No, for sure, man. I mean, I gotta ask though, just to really put a bow on this. I'm always curious about influences because, especially when I see Indonesian cinema, like there's a little bit of everything. Like, what was it for you that got cut into? Well, was it Shaw? Was it Golden Harvest? Was it Hollywood? Like, what was the stuff that made you want to do this?
I'm definitely. Here's the thing, like, if people say like, "Hey, Timo, like we definitely see John Woo in you," like then I won't deny like John Woo has been very, very sort of like monumental in terms of like the kind of films that I make. Because here's the thing, I don't think a lot of people realize, but like my films are actually to a point like overly sentimental. Yeah. Like, you know, like it has a lot of like drippy melancholia about it, and I embrace that, you know, because I feel like that's my identity in me portraying this sort of like mayhem and violence. Like it has to come with like a lot of heavy emotions, and I think John would do that as well. You know, like he sort of influenced me because like when I watch John Woo films, oftentimes the things that I remember is not the sort of like the kinetic sort of like action, but it's more, for example, like a Better World Tomorrow, A Better Tomorrow 2, for example. The things that always sort of like sticks in my mind is like when Chow Yun-fat drags that guy as like, you know, the guy who's, you know, what's his name? Geez, I can't remember. Sheng. Yeah, you know, like
I'm drawing a blank too.
But like, you know the one that I mean, right? Like he's like, come on, you gotta do this, and like, you know, he's like eating orange and going crazy as they're shooting through this hallway, and those things are like, man, this is like the level of brotherhood that I feel is so. It's not being ironic. It's being very genuine in its depiction of this sort of like bromance and thing. And I try to sort of like emulate it because I truly believe that's part of cinema. Like that sort of relationship you can't portray in real life, so you have to sort of like do it in the cinema, in the cinematic world.
I do love that you brought up Woo though, because I mean honestly, that is something I see as well. Because with your stuff. And obviously, there's the action, but we give a shit about the characters.
Here's the thing: I do give a shit about characters. That's the thing. Like I do give a shit about even like with the villains. I feel like, well, yes, you can make an over-the-top villain, but at the same time, you have to know where is the humanity coming from in them. You know, like, you know, if you see in the Shadow Strays, you know, like, oh, there's a weird relationship between the son and the father. There's a weird relationship with the cop and who's sort of longing to be loved by this guy who doesn't even realize he's gay, you know, like, so all that little stuff for me, it's like, well, these are the human sort of like world that, and you know, like that I feel here's the thing, they can die, but like, what is the story behind them, you know, like, and that should live on, you know, so I'm definitely a character first, story later kind of person.
No, but I mean, that stuff obviously highlights the spectacle as well. Yeah. I mean, I think of something like Hard Boiled. You know, it's like as much as I was amazed of it all happening in camera, it's like I gave a shit about these people.
Exactly.
Like I was emotionally invested in every single one of them.
Like you do give a shit. Even like with the villain Mad Dog, you give a shit about him. Like, he has his own arc. You know, and that's what I feel like character should be. Like stories has been told over and over again, but like a depiction of character where you see something is slightly different of him or her. Hey, I never seen a villain behave this way before. You know, like, so that's very important to me. Yeah.
Man, thank you for the time, and just thank you for the character.
Man.
And don't forget to visit our friends over at Bay Street Video for all your DVD, Blu-ray rental, or purchasing needs this summer, as they are still open for curbside and some mailing delivery as well. Over at 1172 Bay Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, you can give them a call at 416-964-9088. That's 416-964-9088. Or send them an email at baystreetvideoto@gmail.com for any of your DVD and Blu-ray needs.